Our next guest on The Informer is the Commanding Officer of the Salvation Army. His name is Major Brendan Nottle. He's dedicated more than 2 decades of his life to working with most vulnerable members in our society. He does tremendous work. He also leads the Salvo's Melbourne Project 614, which seeks out those living on the fringe of society and helps them to ease their way back in. A bit like the way that Sister, the man from Pellegrini's, used to do. He used to give people this zest for life and they would come back and their lives would change. Well, Major Brendan Nottle is a member of the Premier's ICE Action Task Force. He's also a Victorian Housing Minister's Rough Sleepers Round Table member. I can also add he's an advisory member on the board at the AIS, the Australian Intercultural Society. He does so many things. He's got so many interests, and he is, I think, the public face of helping those who are homeless, and we're delighted to have him in the studio. Brendan, rather lengthy intro, but I needed to set the setting because you do some tremendous work and have done for years, and you're still just doing it. Is it for a love of people, or is it a mission that someone put you on and you felt you had to finish it?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, George. I think I'm a bit of a fetal salvo. So what I mean by that is I actually, before I was born, 1928, I reckon maybe before you were born.
Just.
My grandmother was 7.5 months pregnant with my mum, and she had 3 little boys, and her husband was a person with a pretty severe drinking disorder and a gambling issue as well. And he died at a relatively young age and left, according to my grandmother, 2 shillings in the bank to raise 3.5 little kids. So it was the Salvos that turned up and supported the family. And I think that's where that connection with the Salvos, but more deeply, I think that desire to really help those that were doing it tough got embedded in our DNA.
Grandma must have given you some wonderful, not DNA, but feed, good vocal commentary about the role that the Salvos have played. And you've, as you say, picked up the cudgels and not let go. And in fact, the rest of the family is now coming in and doing and picking up basically much of your learning, much of your fire and your hunger to help those who are, as we said earlier, on the fringe and really suffering.
Yeah, absolutely, George. I think my dad died when I was 4, and it was a Salvo that turned up and helped the family. My mum died when I was 17. Somebody from the Salvos turned up and provided pretty significant support to me that got me through a really difficult time. So I think those really critical moments in the life, particularly of a young person, really shape and influence how they respond to others. And I really believe that the support that I received has really shaped who I am today.
2013, you were named Melburnian of the Year in recognition of some of this tireless work that you've shown to support the disadvantaged people. Born and bred Melburnian,
yeah.
So you know almost every street, you know every nook and cranny, you know every back way, every alleyway. One thing I didn't know, and our researchers, her name is Rochelle,
yep.
Assistant producer and a whole box of other things when she's focused. She said to me, can you believe he's the Collingwood football chaplain? And has been for many years?
Well, sometimes that causes people to go, it takes their breath away. For other people, and I'd say most people, it causes them to laugh and say, serious? You're obviously not doing a good job if you're the chaplain down at Collingwood Football Club. But that partnership has actually been an absolutely fantastic one for us, because I still remember a young mum coming into a cafe that we run in Burke Street. It's a free cafe for people that are homeless or at risk of homelessness. Mm-hmm. And she came in with a little 6-year-old daughter, and she said that she was the victim of some terrible family violence. And she went to a friend and said, I don't know what to do. And a friend said, oh, look, just go to a local rooming house and you don't have to pay rent straight up. It's just a weekly thing. Don't worry about bond or references. And she said everything was going great. And then after about 6 weeks, she found out that the man in the room next to her had been released from prison on child sex offence charges. So here's this poor mum trying to protect her little girl. And she came in and saw me absolutely distraught in the cafe and said, I just don't know what to do. So I took that story to Eddie and to some other people at Collingwood, and I said, what can we do? And Eddie came back and said, we'll rent 2 houses in the name of the Collingwood Football Club and we'll furnish them. And I said, no, we've got Salvo stores, we'll get second-hand furniture. And I'll never forget, he said to me, if we're going to do this, let's do it properly and let's treat people with the dignity and the respect that they absolutely deserve. And the houses are beautiful, well furnished. And now we've got 50 houses rented in the name of Collingwood Football Club. We've got 145 people off the streets in long-term housing. And we're able to do like this amazing, it's life-transforming work for people simply because Collingwood have come alongside us and said, we're in this together.
That's an extraordinary story. And it reminds so many of us who only see one side of the Collingwood story. And Lord knows at the moment, they've been in the news for all the wrong reasons. Yep. We've seen one of their stars, a number of their stars, in fact, have to leave. One of them, Adam Treloar, didn't want to leave. In fact, they'd done everything to help the club. He accepted a big back-ended deal in order to allow the club to try and fight and make a team worthy of grabbing a title. And now it's all come to naught. And people are furious and they're angry and they're saying, it's 22 years, Eddie Maguire, what have you done for Well, that's what you've done.
Oh, absolutely.
50 homes.
Yeah, and he ties...
From that one episode.
Absolutely, and he ties Collingwood's commitment to that program right back to the history of the Collingwood Football Club in 1892, where the Collingwood Football Club was supporting the Susso workers at that time that were building the grandstands at Victoria Park and would go without meals. So Collingwood would provide meals for the workers and for their families and provide them with free tickets to the football matches. And that's become part of their DNA at Collingwood, and he's embedded that, I think, in the contemporary Collingwood Football Club of today.
That's an exceptional insight, and we thank you for that. A reminder to everyone, you see things, but sometimes you need to look aside from the spotlight and see it for what it really is. You were nominated last year, I know, Victorian Australian of the Year Awards, one of the 4 nominees. What did that mean for you at the time? Was it a vindication to family or just make you feel warm? I don't know. What was it? Yeah,
it's an interesting thing to get nominated for something like that. So first of all, when you get the phone call or the letter, you think, is this an administrative error? Is it Brendan Nottle that was nominated and they've mucked it up or whatever?
Love it.
I think it's embarrassing. Part of me feels a sense of embarrassment because one person doesn't do the sort of work that we're involved in. You've got to have a sensational team. And my team say to me regularly, Brendan, you're great at drinking the lattes and taking the glory for the work, and just let us get on and do the real stuff. But the other part of it too is it was an opportunity to actually put the spotlight on some really critical issues that just continue to roll on and often roll on unaddressed. And so to bring those to the forefront of people's minds was a really important thing.
How has the Salvos dealt with the biggest threat we've had in the last 100 years? The COVID.
Yeah, George, I've got to be really honest and say a couple of things happened for us when COVID struck. So we were seeing 60 to 80 elderly Chinese people come into our cafe every day. So they're not homeless, they're not hungry, they're just desperate for company. And when we found out that COVID had broken in Wuhan, I immediately assumed that that particular group were at high risk. So we have a number of nurses that come in from St Vincent's Hospital every day, and they're amazing. And I spoke to them about my concerns. They came back and said, you've got nothing to worry about because that particular group are low risk because they don't travel and they don't know people that travel.
Got it.
So I went, oh, fantastic. But then in the next breath, the nurses have said, however, the other 500 people that come in here every day are at high risk because they're sleeping on the streets, they've got significant health concerns. And so I was really worried, George, that we were going to lose people and significant numbers of people that were really vulnerable. But I actually got to a point where I thought my life's on the line here. I potentially may not make it through this myself, and our team may not make it through it either, because we had no idea what was going to happen with COVID.
The medical teams didn't know. As we've found out, they learnt each and every month past the information they were getting was changing at a million miles an hour. So it was right to hear you say we were fearful, most fearful, and you were thinking you were going to lose a whole bunch of people.
Absolutely. So a couple of things happened. So our team were remarkable in terms of enforcing social distancing and wearing masks and hand sanitisers. We had people we'd never heard of ringing up saying, hey, I've got a little bit of leftover hand sanitiser, would you like it? We've got face masks here. When face mask wearing became mandatory, we went to the local police and said, rather than finding rough sleepers for not wearing masks or people with serious mental health issues, can you come and connect with us? We'll hand out the masks. Parliament House contacted us and said, we might be able to provide some meals for you that you can provide through a takeaway window at your cafe because you can't have people in the cafe. In about a week's time, Parliament House will clock up 800,000 meals that they've prepared for charities, 8 charities during COVID. It's just a phenomenal figure. So we're there every day, 7 days a week, picking up meals that they've prepared, beautiful meals. And I'll never forget, this was one of those moments that sort of hits you hard and remains with you, where I was out, I was grumbling to myself because I'm in the rain, I'm getting the food out of the van, I'm trying to get into the back of the cafe. And Bernie comes up to me, who's a regular, he's in his 70s, and he goes, where did this food come from? I said, it's come from Parliament House. And he goes, hang on. He goes, the guys up there that cook for kings and queens are cooking for us. And it just hit me in the throat, and I thought, oh my goodness, he's absolutely right. And he said, if you get a moment, can you say thank you on behalf of me, but everybody else, for the fact that they're treating us like kings and queens. It was a very, very powerful moment. And I think the other thing that COVID's done for me is it's put the spotlight on a couple of issues that just roll on and often go unnoticed. And
they are?
First of all, rough sleepers.
Oh, yeah.
And the government responded really well and got those rough sleepers off the street into hotel accommodation. And now they're working on trying to build houses. So the budget, $5.3 billion of new housing, which is just fantastic. But the issue that's been highlighted is that our agency and a whole range of other agencies were engaging with people on the streets and saying free hotel accommodation, free meals. 35 people did not take up that offer. And so some people say, they've chosen to be homeless. But you actually go and talk to that particular group, have conversation with them, and they say, we might be rough sleeping, but homelessness is not our primary issue. We've got really serious mental health issues and no one is doing anything about it. People just keep offering us housing, but they're not doing anything about the core issue for me, which is my mental health that's out of control.
Wow.
And so what it's done is force us to start to collaborate with other services and start to think creatively.
So be a hub, so to speak.
A mobile hub.
A mobile hub.
Yeah. So we've seen examples of it in Boston and in other parts of the world where they actually take a van or a bus with a multidisciplinary team, including somebody driving the bus with lived experience of serious mental health issues that's come through that, and all of the other issues, including homelessness. And so they keep that team grounded and they're on the spot, building relationship, because that's key, building trust.
Absolutely.
And then from there, getting people the support that they need. So that's been a particular issue that's been highlighted. The other one, George, is when stage 4 restrictions were introduced in Melbourne, we all assumed that our numbers would disappear. Numbers of people coming for meals, they went up. And when you actually have conversation with people about their backgrounds, you find out they're not primarily rough sleepers, they're international students, or they're people on temporary work visas.
So all the people that had fallen through the cracks, again, on the fringes, you guys came to the party.
Yeah, through...
Think about it. That's all those... We kept hearing from people saying, the governments have not addressed this area, and you saw them turning up for those meals.
Yeah. Well, they were getting their income primarily through the hospitality industry, which shut down. And that particular group, international students and people on temporary work visas, weren't eligible for JobKeeper or JobSeeker. They can't travel, they can't go home, and they're completely stuck. And I tell you what, it was pretty emotional too, seeing these are kids. These are kids in their late teens. Yeah.
No support.
Completely on their own and fallen through the gaps. So it was absolutely about food. So it's about meeting that really basic need that they had. But it's actually about coming alongside them and saying, we're in this with you, you're not on your own, which was a key part of that work.
So what have we learnt from the Salvo's experience through COVID? What's the one lesson that's come up and resonates brighter than anything else?
Don't listen to the dominant voices. Because the dominant voices say, we've got a bed for you on the street, you're not prepared to take up that bed, therefore you're choosing that path. So what we need to do is actually sit down in the gutter or wherever it is and build connection and have conversation and listen. And it's there that you actually start to understand more deeply what the key issues are. People on the street aren't stupid. Like, they can actually articulate what's going on for them, but we often assume that we're in a position of power. We know what people need. We'll tell them what they need, and we get upset when they don't follow our direction. Wow. But when we actually take the time to sit down and listen, and need to get a little bit uncomfortable with what we're hearing, and we need to get out of our box and think creatively and innovatively to build a meaningful response to that person, that's when we can have a significant impact.
Look, that's a remarkable lesson. And the point that you make about some of it is uncomfortable because we think we know everything, don't we? Yeah? Especially if it's government or if you're in a major group that is working to support them and they're not listening to you, you start to pull your hair out and say, well, clearly they're beyond us. No, they're not.
Yep.
It's just got to change the way we think in order to address their problems and their challenges. One challenge not going away. COVID is passing, not over yet. Christmas is coming. All the obligatory things that everyone expects from Christmas. What are we going to see from all those people who are seriously struggling and haven't got a job yet, still uncomfortably positioned? What are we going to do there? And what has Salvo's got in mind?
Yeah.
Not Collingwood, but Salvo's got in mind.
I think there's two key issues that have got to be addressed. So the first one is the immediate need that people have around food, around toys for their kids. They're critical, around celebration of Christmas. So how are we going to do that? So we're thinking creatively about, we are working with Collingwood, but we're working with the City of Melbourne, and we're working with all sorts of people about how we're going to deliver that meal and on Christmas Day and do it in a way which is safe. So we've got some ideas at the moment. We'll end up in a park nearby and we'll spend the day there, I think. That's where we're heading. But the other key part to all of this is we see people come in during the year for support and they're great. They interact with us really well. There's no issues. You get to the middle of November through to Christmas Day and they're awful. So a lot of those people become agitated. In some cases they become aggressive because I think they look, in shop windows, and they watch TV and the newspapers, and they're reminded over and over and over again of what they don't have.
What they don't have.
Yeah, they don't have family. They don't have access to their kids. Their relationship with somebody they love is broken down for a whole range of reasons, and so they're on their own. And they're reminded of that over and over again. So at Christmas, it is about meeting that immediate physical need, but equally, and probably far more importantly, is the need to say to people, you're not on your own here. And you're cared for. So what we try to do is when someone donates a toy or they donate a meal, we say to people, it's not just about the meal. There's someone somewhere in this country that's thought of you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And is thinking of you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's affirmation and reaffirmation.
Yep.
Fantastic stuff. Major Brendan Nottle has been our guest on The Informer. We started an interview thinking we knew where we were going to go. We've discovered so much more. Brendan, to the whole team at the Salvation Army, congratulations for what has been an extraordinarily difficult year for everyone involved. We wish you a Merry Christmas and may 21 be so much better, even for Collingwood.
Oh, George, you said that out the corner of your mouth through gritted teeth.
It's the navy blue in me. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, George.